Hello and welcome to The Hindu. My name is Abhinay Lakshman and I am Principal Correspondent at the New Delhi Bureau covering social justice, tribal affairs and education. The Supreme Court of India on Thursday kept in abeyance the University Grants Commission's 2026 regulations on promotion of equity in higher educational institutions across the country. These regulations were notified earlier this month, replacing a previous version in effect since 2012. Protests have been intensifying over the last couple of weeks over the 2026 regulations, arguing that they may be discriminatory against general category students. The UGC had introduced the 2012 regulations to address various forms of discrimination within higher educational institutes in India. They defined discrimination, they defined specific instances and types of discrimination faced by scheduled caste and scheduled tribe students across these campuses, such as segregation of social and educational spaces within the institutes. They also provided for mechanisms that the institutes must set up to address these grievances. However, despite these regulations, in 2019, parents of students who had died by suicide alleging caste discrimination approached the Supreme Court seeking that the 2012 regulations be upgraded. In the process of hearing these petitions, the Union government submitted that they were already in the process of updating the regulations and put out a draft last year in 2025. The draft was changed and notified as the 2026 regulations on January 13 this year. In the 2026 regulations, the UGC introduces terminology for caste-based discrimination in addition to defining discrimination. They also provide for stricter accountability mechanisms, prescribing punishments for institutes that do not follow these regulations. These regulations set up equity squads, equity committees for monitoring and oversight by UGC. However, critics of these regulations have argued that in defining caste-based discrimination as they did, they have discriminated against general category students. The 2026 regulations define caste-based discrimination as discrimination only on the basis of caste or tribe against members of scheduled caste, scheduled tribe, and other backward classes communities. The people opposing these regulations have argued that by leaving general category students out of this definition, they have assumed that general category students would be the natural caste oppressors in these university spaces. Further, they've argued that general category students have no recourse to file a complaint for caste discrimination that they might face. Another issue that protesters have taken with these new regulations is the absence of a provision to punish false complaints, which was there in the draft version of the regulations put out in 2025. Protests grew over the last 2 weeks over the new regulations, and petitions were filed in the Supreme Court opposing the new regulations over their discrimination definition. On Thursday, a bench led by the Chief Justice of India, Surya Kant, noted that the 2026 regulations may be too vague and could be misused. The bench asked whether it was necessary to define caste-based discrimination when a definition of discrimination already included caste discrimination. However, Senior Advocate Indra Jaising, in intervening in these petitions, argued that the arguments being put forth as these provisions being discriminatory towards the general category students was akin to comparing able-bodied persons to disabled persons. Even as opposition to these new regulations grew across parts of North India over the last 2 weeks, some sections of society have been arguing that they may not be enough or strong enough to protect SC, ST and OBC students from the kind of discrimination that they face in campuses. They have argued that the definitions of discrimination lack specificity, as the 2012 regulations did. They have also argued that the applicability of these regulations needed clarity. They sought clarity on whether these would apply to premier institutes like Indian Institutes of Technologies and Indian Institutes of Management. Now, the Supreme Court has tagged these batch of petitions opposing the 2026 regulations with the original petitions from 2019 that sought for the upgradation of the 2012 regulations. The Supreme Court has also asked the Union government to respond to these petitions and issued a notice to them. The matter is now posted for March this year. For more such videos, please subscribe to The Hindu. Thank you.